Delta State Police Command has arrested 22-year-old Ezekiel Elijah of Isoko South Local Government Area in connection with the alleged defilement of a 13-year-old hearing-impaired girl. The suspect is accused of luring the minor to his residence and exploiting her physical vulnerability. While Elijah admitted to knowing the victim was hearing impaired, he claimed ignorance of her age. Delta State Police Command spokesperson SP Bright Edafe confirmed that the arrest and provided details of interrogation. During questioning, Elijah acknowledged the wrongfulness of his actions, stating he would be deeply saddened if such a crime were perpetrated against his own child. SP Edafe stated and also emphasized the critical distinction between rape and defilement, particularly in case involving minors. Rape is different from defilement. For defilement, the consent of the underage girl is immaterial, which means you can't say she is my girlfriend. But in this case, the 13-year-old girl he defiled is even physically impaired. He took advantage of the child, lured her to his room, and defiled her. May God help us, SP Edafe explained. He underscored that the victim's age renders any purported consent irrelevant and that Elijah's actions constituted a clear exploitation of the girl's disability. The Delta State Police Command is conducting a thorough investigation into the incident. The suspect remains in custody pending further legal proceeding. Okay, so sir, this story is about a 13-year-old, just like we read, and the issue of rape and molestation, especially for little children within the ages of maybe 13, 16, 12, and all of that, I think is becoming a big problem in our society, because I find it difficult to understand why an adult would find a child interesting, especially in this case where the child cannot even the child has hearing impairment. So I don't know, what do you think about this story?
Well, I believe we have heard so many stories,
yes,
where men, adults, defied children. Let's call them children.
Okay.
So is so sad. I know that as human beings, we may be moved to do some things that sometimes we begin to wonder, was I the one that did this? You can see it in the reaction of the man himself. He later realized himself as if he was possessed. Sometimes people say that anybody that does this kind of thing must be possessed by an evil spirit.
Okay.
Because I cannot see the reason why an adult, an old man, can see a little child and get attracted and begin to have some feelings towards the child. If you have that kind of feelings, which adults do have, yes, you should be able to look for your fellow adults and not a child that cannot even have anything to contribute in your pleasure seeking.
Yes.
And so that's that. But the police, I think they will do justice to that, okay, so that it can serve as a deterrent for others. Yes. The fact is that so many people in our society have done this kind of thing and walked free. So if we hold people accountable, if crimes are brought to justice, if suspects in Nigeria are brought to justice, this kind of suspects, people will be discouraged from doing that,
carrying out such practices.
It's not that when you see some societies that this kind of thing really happens, it's not that they are perfect human beings. Mm-hmm. It's because everybody has it at the back of his or her mind that if I do this, the law is going to catch up with me. Okay. So at the end of the day, you see people pulling themselves away from committing crimes. Okay. So the police force, they should do their job and make sure that justice is
served. You
just
talked
served.
about being possessed and then later being remorseful about
Yes.
the acts that has been carried out. Do you think this has to do with spirituality? Do you think that people who carry out these acts, these indecent acts, are usually possessed, or it's just nature?
Well, I'm not. How do I put it? I'm not a spiritual expert.
Okay.
You know, so I don't have any evidence to.
Yeah.
But what I believe is that something must have happened to the person's conscience
After the act or before
before the act.
Okay.
Something more. When people commit crimes, they harden their hearts. It's not that they don't know that what they are doing is bad. And their hearts have been hardened, and they are not thinking of the other way around. What if I am caught?
Okay.
What if I do this kind of thing and something bad happens? What if the child dies?
Yeah.
Are you getting it? Another story will come up. So people harden their hearts when they want to do bad, when they want to commit atrocities. They always harden their hearts. Even if there is a voice, in the spiritual sense, maybe a voice talking to you, the voice of God, or even your conscience talking to you, you always stifle that voice, so that you carry out your act. Then when you finish, you begin to ask yourself, what happened? Was I the one that did this? You know, it happened. This kind of thing happens to us, happens to human beings every day. So I don't know whether human beings are just bestriding the spiritual and physical world. We are here. We are here and there. We are not fully here. We are not fully there. That we don't get, when we are doing some things, we are not fully conscious of what we are doing. You want to kill somebody, you are killing some. You know, when just like anger, when you are angry, you silence reason. You want to pour out yourself first. Then after doing that, you begin to, what happened?
So you're saying that it's not necessarily about spirituality.
It's about, human beings are controlled by emotions. We are controlled by feelings. Most of the things we do are driven by emotions. So that is the problem that we human beings have. When we take this, even when we are taking, that's why some people say, don't take a decision when you are angry.
When you're angry.
Are you getting it? And don't. Maybe when you are before a woman, you are feeling so. Don't make promises you cannot fulfill.
Yeah.
You know that is when people. After you have made your promises, after that, after the. Then he go deep. You begin to realize yourself. So we are human. We have weaknesses, and I believe God understands that human beings are fallible. Are you getting it? We have our human failings. God understands that we are weak in terms of doing what is right. But we need to, that's why it's good to have discipline. People that have discipline, it's not that they are perfect, it's not that they are extraordinary human beings. But from time to time, they ask themselves questions. If I do this, what benefits will I gain? Let me not do this. If I do this, I will fall into trouble. If I do this, God will punish me. That's why we say some people have fear of God. If I do this, God will get offended. Then in society, if I do this, the law will catch up with me.
Okay.
So you see people acting like normal human beings, like they are perfect, but human beings are not perfect. The fact is that people keep improving.
But sir, you know that when it comes to the issue of rape and abuse, most times it's usually found, within or amongst the male gender. You barely hear cases where you say that a little boy was raped by a woman and all of that.
We rarely hear cases like that, but they are happening. Things like that happen.
It's not as
so many men today have stories of women defiling them.
So is it like they intentionally decide not to speak out?
Many men today were introduced into sex by women.
Okay.
Adam himself was introduced into sex by a woman. Are you getting it? So most times, so the fact is that we don't want to talk about it.
Okay, most so the male gender decides not to talk about it.
Because we are talking about defilement here.
Okay.
When you are introducing somebody, an underaged person, into sex without the person's consent, and not even consent, because here this defilement, consent is not talked about. This person is not up to the age.
Yes.
So when you take a look at what happens, you see that what happens in our society, you see that women too are involved. I've heard the story where a maid introduced, always teaching the boy, trying to arouse, keep him aroused, to begin to feel, until one day the guy now graduated to a level where he now wanted to enjoy it. So that is defilement.
Okay, sir. So why do you think the male gender intentionally decides not to talk about these things as often as the opposite sex?
Societies are not built to protect the male, the male child.
Yeah.
Are you getting it?
Yes.
Societies are built to protect the female child. That is the truth. Even what happens in the other day, we talked about domestic violence.
Yes.
You see that in many homes,
yes,
both sides of domestic violence are happening. But what you often hear about is that of the female, the violence against the female. That is what you often hear, because a man can hardly come out and say, my wife slapped me. My wife refused to give me this. My wife has been denying me this or that. Are you getting it? Even when they complain, they are complaining of what men complain about is the woman's character. We lay hold on character. She's not giving me peace.
Okay.
But society does not want to see this idea of women not giving men peace as violence. This is the greatest violence that is happening in many homes. But we don't want to talk about it because it looks like portraying men as weak. Are you getting it? No man wants to be called weak. You know that.
Okay. So in this case of rape, that has been a reoccurring act, especially in this our society, because I've heard of it a lot of times in recent times. So what are the measures you think can be put in place to curtail these acts? Do you think, because I've heard people talk about, for example, people getting sex toys for themselves, like if there's a need for you to have sex with someone and you cannot meet anyone, you could go ahead and use a sex toy rather than raping someone. Do you think that would help?
It's not the best solution. It's not the solution.
As opposed to raping someone.
Everything starts with education.
Okay.
I remember when I was in school, when I was in primary school, secondary school, I was not introduced to sex education.
Okay.
And even most of our parents didn't teach us anything about sex. We learned all those things on the street. But when you start teaching young children about sex, what happens to their bodies as they grow up, what happens or what may happen when they get too intimate with somebody. and the consequences. Anything, in this life, anything you do has consequences.
In this case, the person who raped or defiled this child is an adult. It's not even someone you need to start teaching about sex. So it
now, this man himself, you can see that now anybody that has good upbringing will not do that kind of
thing.
So everything starts from training from childhood. Start teaching people morality. Let them know that they are humans. Some of the things that happen to them, most of the feelings they have, that all these things are normal as human beings. But this is the way to go about it. This is how to behave. This is how to avoid those things. And these are the things that may happen to you if you don't control yourself. You see that discipline, people will begin to know the value of discipline. Discipline does not mean that you are a saint. Mm-hmm. When Nelson Mandela came out of prison, he saw how people were celebrating him. He said, "I am not a saint, unless you think of a saint as someone who keeps on trying." So when you keep on trying, keep on improving as a human being, keep on being a good person, at the end of the day, people will say, this person is a good person. Are you getting it? So if we keep teaching children, let's keep teaching, keep talking, keep advising. Everybody needs advice. Everybody needs counseling. Don't say, if I teach this person this, the person will get exposed. Are you getting it? No, let the person, for the first time, the person will be surprised. The person will be outraged. Are you getting it? But let them begin to know what they are supposed to know as human beings.